which celebrity is the most meme celebrity on Twitter?
Oh, white or black?
White or black?
I don't know who the most memed is, but I definitely feel like Nene is the most has the most utility uses.
Thought it was a great documentary, and also I'm a documentary person, so that's saying a lot for me.
Oh,
Because
thank you.
I
I
watched,
appreciate that. Thank you.
so that was awesome. I know this is your first time, or I read that this is your first time directing a
Yeah.
documentary. I want to know what was the difference between directing this and some of the other TV film projects you've been a part of.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a real subject matter, right? Which is differently than certainly doing something that you kind of create from your own imagination. So to me, there's a different level of care and a different level of honesty is the wrong word, but I can't find like a better word for that. You know what I mean? And especially dealing with the subject matter is going to be dealing with, right? Like Black Twitter has lots of opinions about Black Twitter and who's talking about Black Twitter and why they're talking about Black Twitter and should we be talking about Black Twitter, all these types of things. So for me, that was just the beginning process, and also to the other part that I think was tricky was how do you take this article but what's the story behind it, right? Because it's existing in a two-dimensional space with words, but this is going to be visual, right? It has to be and telling a slightly different story than what the article's doing. So for me, that was the trickier thing. It's like, Black Twitter is really amorphous thing. It's not a person. It's not an event. It's kind of like, and then what parts of Black Twitter are we talking about, right? This time where, so all of that just became, I think, initially daunting, which is why I didn't want to do it at first. But as it continued to scare me and challenge me is what made it all the more reason why I should do it, right? And so that's really, but once I figured out what the story was, and to me the story was a coming of age story about Black Twitter, right? Which a lot of coming of age stories start where the hero is young and naive and then has to step into his or hers power, right? And that to me was what Black Twitter was doing, right? Having fun, finding each other. Then Trayvon kind of being this, the way like we always would talk about, oh, when Obi-Wan dies is when Luke realizes, oh, there are real stakes to this, right? And he has to go on a different journey. And that was sort of what I think Trayvon was for Black Twitter. It was, what are we going to do in this moment? Are we going to rise to the occasion and kind of push back, or are we going to kind of take it and swallow it? And you saw Black Twitter obviously, stand up and push back and grow into what it needed to grow into.
When did you start taking Twitter seriously? Was there any particular moment that you were like, because a lot of people, there's certain people, yeah, we all had Twitter just to have Twitter,
Right.
but then there was in some type of point where I was like, oh no, I actually, will participate in and then get engulfed in it.
Yeah, I had a few different moments. I think the Obama election was the first time that I kind of realized, oh, there's real conversations going on around here. And obviously, sort of, and the pushback of that of, who would later become the president and say he wasn't born here and all these types of things that were happening on the platform. I was like, oh, this is more than just like finding out about sports or just kind of, being here. It's like there's real things kind of happening here. And so to me, that was kind of a moment. I think obviously like Trayvon being a huge kind of like linchpin moment in terms of like, okay, I need to, because I wasn't just commenting, it was like getting information. It was like learning about things that aren't happening in my neighborhood that the news isn't reporting on, right? Like that was a big moment. And I think the moment that I started, when Insecure came out and really started to engage people on Insecure about the show and getting their response and engaging with them, realized I was like, this really is a community. Like those kind of all things made me feel like, oh, this is because again, even when I was tweeting or whatever before, I was a writer, but I wasn't somebody people knew like that, right? Once Insecure came out and I'm doing the wind downs and just in front of the camera more in terms of who people know connected to the show, that's when I started to realize like, oh, I can also impact and influence people in certain ways too, and because it wasn't reciprocal yet to me. I was giving, but I wasn't receiving anything like that. And so that's when I realized like, oh, this is like a serious, impactful, real community, like a family in lots of ways.
So we know that, Black people have really, the people behind it are really the voice that, create Black Twitter and, kind of amplify Twitter and things like that. I want to know from you, why is it that if we have all this ability in ourselves, why are we not able to put that behind a black owned or a black owned or an app that's created for us?
Behind a black, I couldn't hear you. A black what?
On a black owned app that was
Oh,
created for us, media app. How come we, if we, we're able to do all this with Black Twitter and things like that, how come we're not able to do that for an app that is created for us?
that's an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I think there's ways in which I think Kamal says this in the doc, right? Which is like black people like being like doing our own thing, but we also like being in the mainstream conversation too, right? So you kind of like doing both things. And I think what's interesting about so I don't know the full answer to that. I would say that we like dabbling in both, right? And I think what I think is so interesting about Twitter is like, typically in America before if you were not of a certain culture, you could not know anything going on over there, right? Like back in the day, like if you didn't want to live with black people, you certainly didn't have to because things are their segregation, right? If you don't want to see what's black TV, you don't have to watch those TV stations, or you don't have to pick up Ebony or Essence. You don't have to know anything about it, right? But I think, but once Twitter hit and Black Twitter hit, and we got to be in the same space with everybody else, you couldn't ignore the things we were talking about anymore because once you got on the app, it was there, right? So it wasn't like, oh, I got to turn on the CW or the UPN. It was like, it didn't matter if you turned your imagine turning your television on and the first, no matter what station you turn to, is talking about something like that. That's about the culture. That would shift everything, right? And I think that's the power you really saw of Black Twitter is you couldn't just open the app and decide I'm not gonna like hear what's trending today. You didn't have a choice. We were dictating what was trending. And so I think that changes the narrative. It changes the conversation. You have to take that as an equal that I think before you didn't have to. And I think even if we were siloed like that, I don't know if it would have the same impact because it would just be like, that's over there and it's not impacting the rest of culture. But when you're impacting quote unquote mainstream culture, you can't ignore the culture that's influencing that. Right. And so I always want there to be, black owned apps and things like that in terms of that. Cause I think obviously that's important. But I don't know if that's the only way we could operate and if it would have had the same impact had we just been more siloed over there.
And my last question for you is, who do you think, which celebrity is the most meme celebrity on Twitter?
Oh, white or black?
White or black?
I don't know who the most memed is, but I definitely feel like Nene is the most has the most utility uses, right? Like I think Nene has the most. Although Steve Harvey's getting up there. Steve Harvey's getting up there with the he's worried or he's walking out with the suit or he's clapping. But I still think Nene's. If I had to say like which one I said what I said. Ooh, child, the ghetto. There's just so many Nenes that I think Nene. I think is still the queen of it.
I agree. That's my time. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.